Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy.
All right. Hello and welcome to Three Films and a Podcast. My name is Tyler Beck. I'm coming to you from the eternal winter hellscape of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm joined, as always, by my dear friend Benjamin Lawhorn. And unfortunately, looks like Matt followed a bogus tip and he went to the wrong house. So we're on our own here. Benjamin. Forget where I was in the moment. I was just so proud of my little movie reference tease for the episode.
It was very good.
Where can people find us on social media?
Anywhere and everywhere. We are pretty much everywhere at Three Films Pod, Instagram and Twitter and all the other ones. And also we have a YouTube channel where you can watch all of us. You can watch the three of us talk about this movie, which would be super fun. And threefilmspod.com.
That's right. And if Matt was here, he would tell you to go look at our Patreon support options. But he's not here, so we're not going to tell you to do that.
Do it.
But if you want to, you can. But that's
so don't do it.
Yeah. But regardless, if you're new here, if you've been following us for a while, we're happy to have you here. We're we love the movie club. We do this for you. We don't do this for us. This is a labor of love. The people demand our presence on the internet. So here we are providing. And before we go any farther, and before we actually dive into the movie, we have to introduce our very special guest. We have one half of the Movie Mavens, the Movie Mavens. We have Carsen. Carsen, say hello to everybody.
Hi, I'm Carsen. I unfortunately am missing my better half, my co-host Annie of the Movie Mavens. She decided to take a vow of silence in solidarity with the Lambs after watching the movie, so she couldn't make it tonight. I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to be here with you guys. Also sad that Matt isn't here, though.
No,
just weird, a weird amalgamation of what is happening right now. But I'm glad to be here with both of you.
Same.
Yes, we're very happy to have you. You joined us for one of my favorite all-time movies, The Big Lebowski. Well, you and Annie both did. And I believe my memory serves me correctly, you were on a movie draft as well. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
The worst memory on the planet. I literally can't even remember my mom's birthday sometimes. So.
Oh no.
I was actually just talking to her about that today. I always get the day wrong. I think it's either the 3rd or the 4th, and I can never remember which one it is.
Okay, which is it, the 3rd or the 4th?
It's the 3rd. It's the 3rd.
Good.
Nice.
And good. I know it, but when I'm on the spot, I'm like, well, maybe it's the 4th. All I remember is that I don't remember. You know what I mean? So then I'm like, anyways, that's a little peek into the old dude's head here. But this week's so actually, where can people find you, Carsen? Where can people find your podcast? What's your show all about?
Yeah. Okay. So Movie Mavens, we do spicy double features every week. And we relate the movies in any possible way, genre, director. We've even done title. We did Mother, and I think we did The Two Little Women. One time the double feature was two blue bobs. We did Kimmy and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Yeah, so it's just thank you. It's fun and quirky. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, honestly. And then we're also on Twitter at Movie Mavens Pod and on Instagram at Movie Mavens.
Nice.
Please do go follow them.
Yeah, we'll have all those links in there. You guys just covered all the Last of Us episodes too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
TV Mavens. We made a comeback. Sometimes we'll do bonus episodes of TV Mavens, and Annie suggested we do the whole season, and I was like, why not?
Let's do it. You guys can do Succession?
And if I remember right...
I don't think we're going to do Succession.
I want to hear the Succession answer. Yeah.
No, I don't think so, unfortunately.
One of you, because I remember listening to one of your Last of Us episodes, and one of you was a gamer and one of you wasn't. I can't remember which one.
Yes.
Is.
Okay. Annie is a gamer, and the reason we did this season is because it's her favorite game of ever.
Okay.
I have not so much as ever even played like Nintendo 64. I just not gamer inclined, not interested at all.
That's fair.
but I was so intrigued by it was an HBO show. It's got Pedro Pascal and it's about zombies. So I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we all thought. Yeah.
Yeah. There's reading the tea leaves, like listening to interviews and stuff. It sounds like we're going to get more mushroom zombies in season 2, but
that's
for a different show. Yeah. Give the Movie Mavens a follow. Go listen to their podcast. If you like the show at all, you're going to like theirs much more. So please, once you've done listening to this one, go 100%. Check out the Mavens. Okay. So this week's episode finds us at the very end of our "You haven't seen that" round. How was Matt's delivery of that is way better.
That was pretty good.
Yours is really good though.
Oh, I appreciate that. Matt has that he has that shrill quality to it. Like a nasal,
a charming shrill.
Anyways, that's the round we're doing.
That's how we describe Matt. Charmingly shrill.
Charmingly shrill. So this round, it's an exploration of all the egregious omissions from our personal viewing histories, or at least 3 of them. So we're doing 3 movies that elicit the most shock and ridicule from our friends, family, strangers alike when they find out that despite having a movie podcast, we somehow haven't seen every single movie ever made. Yeah, and that's actually the genesis of this podcast, really. Ben and I started a movie club back in the day to just try and get each other to watch more movies. Matt got involved and turned into the podcast. That's well documented on the show.
What a beautiful history.
Carsen, I am curious, what do you think, in your opinion, is your most egregious? You haven't seen that movie?
Oh, there's so many blind spots in my action movie. So earlier we very briefly mentioned Star Wars. I've watched, I think maybe 1 or 2 Star Wars. I've also never seen any of the Indiana Jones movies.
Hey, same.
Yeah.
Well, except for the last one.
There's a lot of, and then all the Mission Impossible movies. I think it's just action movies in general. There's so much, I just have so many blind spots there. But honestly, okay, Annie and I talked about this on our show of we try really hard not to shame ourselves about not having seen anything, because there's so many movies to watch.
There's so much to see.
So much. So whenever I get that, you haven't seen that, I'm like, relax.
Yeah,
just
chill
please.
out. Yeah, totally fair.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with still having some room to explore? You know what I mean? I'll be honest. I used to kind of be that guy, oh, you haven't seen, especially if it's a movie I feel very strongly about, let's say The Big Lebowski. Although I would understand why someone wouldn't have seen that, but Jurassic Park or something. You haven't seen Jurassic Park? What are you doing? Where have you been? What kind of childhood did you have? But then it's I finally took a look at myself. I'm like, well, dude, I haven't seen a million movies. I haven't seen some of the most popular movies of all time. Ben's submission for this round was The Mummy, or Matt's submission was Good Will Hunting. And I hadn't seen The Mummy. I had seen Good Will Hunting, but those are 2 of the most popular movies of all time. So we covered them on this podcast. And it's I actually had the experience with The Mummy talking to my brother-in-law. I had told him I hadn't seen it, and he gave me "You haven't seen that? What are you doing? This is my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it 100 times." And it's I've actually come the other way around on it. I can appreciate that passion from someone, right? I can appreciate that those movies mean a lot to those people. And then I guess I get less defensive about it, and I can open up a conversation about it, find out why they like it. And then, we can put it on and watch it together. And that's always a good time. But, one of the most glaring omissions from my watch list, it's a monster on my watch list. It's glaring back at me from behind a steel-wired face mask. And that is 1991's Best Picture winner, The Silence of the Lambs. It, of course, stars Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, who took home Oscars for Best Female and Male Actor in a Leading Role, respectively. And Jonathan Demme was a director who took home the prize of Best Director. And this movie is it's sweet. And this movie's a behemoth. You know what I mean? It's one of the most popular movies of all It's something that, I mean, even my mom has seen it. She's a very sweet lady. She doesn't like scary stuff. She's not into like violence or whatever, but even she has seen this movie and she likes it. So it's been something that's been on my list forever. It almost got to the point where it was like I felt like I'd almost missed the boat too far. Like I might as well just never watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And plus, like I've seen through different clips or references or whatever scene analysis on YouTube or wherever, I've seen like 90% of this movie. I know literally everything that happens. And even despite that being the case, I've loved this movie. It was still so effective, just terrifying. I was literally on the edge of my seat. Well, not literally because I was on my bed, but like literally figuratively, I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved it just as much as I thought I would. And Carsen, I'm curious, like what your experience with this movie was, like sort of your high level review of it, like that sort of thing. Like, what does this movie mean to you and where does it fit in your life?
Yeah. So I definitely, like you, I have seen the movie through clips. I distinctly remember just like, I think my earliest memory of this, even before having watched it, was some sort of when I was a teenager watching some sort of like IFC countdown or something like that of like insane scenes or something. And seeing the Buffalo Bill scenes and just being absolutely terrified of like, it rubs the lotion on its skin and like, oh my God.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Mister, my family will pay cash. Whatever ransom you're asking for, they'll pay it.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure like I watched it maybe like in my late teens. I was like 18 or 19. And it didn't really like land for me. I didn't really take any big feelings from it, but I knew that I liked it. And then having watched it again now, the biggest theme that came out for me, it's like, it's so interesting that this is what I took away from it. And it doesn't have anything to do with like the manhunt or like the cannibalism or anything like that. It's so much more about Jodie Foster successfully occupying men's spaces.
Yeah.
I thought like for 1991, what a feat, truly. Like for her to occupy men's spaces in such a successful way and kick ass and like solve the case of the century.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And the coolest thing for me about Jodie Foster's performance here is like I sort of in some way intuitively knew that that's kind of what this movie was about. You know what I mean? Like, I guess like the sexism of our culture has been like pretty apparent for most of my life, right? Like whether I was as woke as whatever back in the day, like I sort of knew like, oh, it's interesting that it's a woman that's the hero of this film, right? And so when I finally watched it and saw the full context, like I really appreciated the fact that her character was totally capable, confident, smart, strong, all that stuff, but also obviously wildly inexperienced. Like she keeps making little mistakes and you can tell she's a little nervous or she's just subtly unsure and isn't quite sure what to do, but somehow always figures it out and is still always the smartest person in the room. And I loved that so much because I love a superwoman, don't get me wrong, but I thought it was so cool that she was like a real person, you know what I mean? And it was instantly apparent like how she won the Academy Award, especially given who she was up against with Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter. I mean, that's an all-time role, an all-time character. And I knew that she won the award, so it made sense that she probably is keeping up. But I was like, well, maybe I hate to say it, but I was like, well, maybe they just gave it to her because it was the best movie. And, like maybe it was sort of like a default award. But I was like, no, she fucking crushed this. And like, it was such a nuanced, cool performance that I was genuinely surprised by, not because I doubted Jodie Foster's talent or anything, but it was just like, I didn't understand that that's how it would be played. And that was really cool.
Yeah.
And that accent work, that was carrying a lot of it, you know. She had that nice accent going.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, it's only been recently that I've
been
seen
chopping
this.
Up for you too, Carsen?
Yeah, you cut out.
Did I cut out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything you said.
I heard that accent.
That accent.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's it.
I mean, it makes more sense now why you guys didn't laugh at my joke. It's like, God, that fucking fell flat. All right. I won't do that again.
Stare.
It's like, damn.
I just don't want to cut off in case maybe Carsen heard. So like you can continue the conversation that won't get broken, but it seemed obvious that neither of us could hear. So anyways, that accent, let's hear about it.
Nope. I can't do it now. It'd be great if I had done her accent.
I thought it was cool. I read that the FBI fully supported this movie and really lent a lot of their resources and time to help me make this because they wanted to use it as a way to recruit more female agents.
Dude,
that was
awesome.
Pretty cool.
It's not only did we as the audience root for her, but also her boss rooted for her. And
totally.
The most psychotic serial killer in this universe was also rooting for her. She was a likable character. We wanted her to succeed and win the case and become this darling that she deserved to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting too because like I mean, you say her boss was rooting for her, which I think in the end he was, but it's interesting because I think the first time that she goes to meet Hannibal, he's like, "Oh, Crawford's sending what do you say, like one of his hot young recruits to see if that'll, get a different response out of me." I was like, "Oh, it's kind of interesting. Like, did he do that? Is that why he sent her? Or did he actually think like she would be great at this? Like, I don't know, but
well, he makes the comment later. He says to her in the car, if you had known what the agenda was, he would have known instantly. So I had to send you in blind.
Well, if that was the case, then I just wish I was in on it, that's all.
If I'd sent you in there with an actual agenda, Lecter would have known it instantly. He would have toyed with you, then turned to stone.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good call. I like to believe that he had all the faith in her, but I thought just him bringing that up, or Hannibal bringing that up, was kind of interesting. But I mean, I'm relatively new to this, honestly, probably within the last like 2 or 3 years. Like I didn't see this, and this is another example that I bring up a lot of. I'm glad I saw it when I did, because I don't know that, like, Carsen, like you said, when you're 18, 19, like, I don't know, like, it's fine, whatever, and I don't know that I would have revisited it. So I'm glad that, I watched it when I did, and it was fun to rewatch it now. I am just like, yeah, I mean, the 5 awards that it took, like Best Picture, both leads, the directing and the writing, it was like, oh, that's an impressive feat to take all those home. And I think all of it is like well worth it. Hopkins blows my mind. Like, I saw you write the outline, or I saw what you had written in the outline, Tyler, and then you'd written like, and they both won for leading roles. I'm like, oh, I'll fix that. It's supporting. Like, it's probably he just overlooked it or something like that, And then I went and I saw it, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? Like, it really is for a leading role. Like, I thought for sure it was supporting, and that blows my mind.
21 minutes of screen time. It's the second, I believe it's the second shortest amount of screen time to ever win leading category.
That's crazy. But he owned all 21 of those minutes. You know what I mean? Like, he was, he was fantastic. So, it's a scary movie. It's an intense movie. I think that's why I had avoided it, because I just didn't know. I think maybe I was giving it more of like it's gonna be like a gore horror movie or something, I thought it was gonna be a lot different than it ended up being. But I love it. I think it's a great film. I'm glad that we got to rewatch it. Jodie Foster is just like perfect in this. Like, she's awesome. I can't think of who else like could have done that role as well. She was ideal for this. And I think they have a really good back and forth, which, I'll talk about that later, but I think that's a huge thing, is you have to believe both of these people. And I think they both were super convincing. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
The director wanted Michelle Pfeiffer for this role originally. And I was thinking about that. Right.
Oh, really? Whoa.
I was thinking about that, and just like, I think Michelle Pfeiffer would have brought a certain femininity that just would not have worked. The way that Jodie Foster carried herself on screen and carried that character, I don't think that there's anything. Yeah, like you said, Ben, I don't think that there's anyone else that could have played this role as successfully as she did. It was like a slam dunk from the very beginning.
Yeah. We get to know like her, like how intense she is just from that opening scene of like running the course and stuff like that. It's like, oh, she's not fucking around. Cause even if it is like, you know, the whole, you know, got to keep up with the guys or whatever. It's like she's putting in the work while, you know, presumably none of the guys are. She's like, no, I'm going to like be the top of my class. I'm going to like shine basically. And she does, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Pfeiffer would have made almost more sick because so much of this movie, there was so much to do about Jodie Foster's looks or Clarice's looks. And like, you know, she's gorgeous, but like Michelle Pfeiffer was like a sexual icon for the entirety of the 90s. So like that would have, I'm not going to say it would have worked better, but it certainly would have worked. And she has that like, you know, playing Catwoman and stuff, she has that like elegant movement, you know, but like, I think there's something about like, there's something a little more, I don't know if gritty is the right word, but like Jodie Foster seems like she's not afraid. The Clarice Foster seems she's not afraid to like get down and get into the look of it, which we see throughout the movie. Right? And like, not to say that we wouldn't have bought that from Michelle Pfeiffer, but I think Jodie Foster was like clearly the right way to go. And apparently, when she read this book, Jodie Foster, she tried to buy the rights, but it was Gene Hackman had already bought the rights, and he wanted to direct and star in it. But you know, a whole bunch of sliding doors.
That'd be interesting. Yeah,
he wanted to play either Hannibal Lecter or whatever the FBI director's name is. I can't remember
Crawford.
His name. Crawford. That's right. And I love Gene Hackman. I would be curious to see his Hannibal Lecter, but I'm not sure if he could do it. Like, I've seen Hannibal Lecter. We've all seen Hannibal Lecter. We've all seen the scenes. I've seen 19 of the 21 minutes that he's on screen as Hannibal Lecter before this movie. And like out of context, I'll be honest, I never totally got it. I was like, yeah, he's like creepy, but I never totally understood why he was considered to be like the scariest villain of all time.
Yeah.
Or one of anyways. But like in the context of the movie, like is in the context of the story, it's like, oh, I fucking get it. There's just something about the way that the movie is, you know, that it's all presented in the story that like, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, this guy is absolutely terrifying. And like the scene that I hadn't seen was the breakout scene, which I have notes for the police. It's like, you've been harping on the rules for interacting with this guy the entire movie. It's like, yeah, of course he broke out. You broke every single fucking rule that you've ever given with interacting with this dude. But anyways, so all the way up until he makes it to the elevator, or so we think. So I thought now would be a good time, since we're talking about elevators, to drop a few elevator pitches to try and convince some people who, if they're listening to this podcast and they haven't seen this movie already, what would you tell them right now? What scene would you show them to try and convince them to watch this wonderful movie?
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Carsen, I want to start with you.
Oh, thank you for asking. So there's two scenes that really stick out in the front of my mind as just being the best of this movie. The first one, I kind of touched on this, was Jodie. It's very brief. It's like maybe 45 seconds, 1 minute of Jodie Foster and Crawford. They're in a car and they're driving back. It's after the autopsy. And they were previously in a room full of sheriff, like tons of men. And Crawford makes a comment that they should watch their mouth around, you know, a woman or a lady or whatever vernacular he uses. And then when they're in the car later, he says, you know, I could tell you got a little pressed on when I said that, and Jodie Foster very confidently says, it matters what you say in front of those people. They are looking to you to set an example of how to speak to me and how to behave around me. And he was like, okay, point taken. Thank you.
Yeah.
And like just the simplicity of that. And like, I feel like in that small interaction, that's just how she behaved. And that's who her character was throughout the whole movie of like, I am supposed to be here. I can occupy this space.
Yeah.
And you like you're either on board or you're not.
Starling. When I told that sheriff we shouldn't talk in front of a woman, that really burned you, didn't it? It was just smoke, Starling. I had to get rid of him.
Matters, Mr. Crawford. Cops look at you to see how to act. Matters.
Point taken.
That scene was really powerful to me. I don't know that it would work necessarily as like a single scene of like, here, you need to watch this.
Yeah.
Maybe for certain groups. But I will tell you what is going to absolutely rock a horror fan. And this might be my real pick is the breakout scene when Hannibal Lecter eats the face of a police officer. So sick.
Yeah.
It's so epic. It's so quick. The action is so like the lighting in that. Were they in a gymnasium for some reason? Like, the lighting, the action, the blocking, just all of it, the noises that they were making, just so grotesque. And also like it gets to the meat and the bones of what we're working towards in terms of suspense. And it just like, that scene flies in my mind.
Yeah.
Well, and the absolute like stone-faced million-mile stare from Hopkins as he's doing these just insanely terrible things. And we hear earlier in the movie that he supposedly has like a resting heart rate of 80 while he's murdering people or something. I can't remember exactly how we learned that, but then you see it and I'm like, that would be difficult to play because you have to be actually physical in those scenes. He's swinging a real bat, like he's doing real movement, and you know, and it was shocking. It's like, it was pretty intense. That the scene you mentioned with Clarice and Crawford in the car, that scene, like, I thought everything you said was 100% right, and I agree, but it like almost made me mad. So I was like, we've been fighting this shit for fucking years. Like it's so easy to get like caught in the moment. Like we're finally talking about this stuff. It's like, no, dude, we've been talking about this for fucking years. And we see this a lot like in this podcast and watching these older movies, like even stuff back into, I can't remember some of the episodes we've done, but like, you know, Hitchcock stuff or stuff in the 70s or whatever. And it's like, there are certain themes that pop up that we think are like, just now being talked about. It's like, God damn it, dude, this stuff has been in front of our faces and people have been telling us that this is a problem for a long time. And like, I'm glad that, you know, there's more widespread acknowledgement of these types of issues, but like for that line to be in that movie and for that character to exist seemed like an obvious statement to me. I'm just like, how the fuck have we not have we not figured this out yet? Why does this seem prescient and relevant and not like antiquated and a thing of the past? You know what I mean? And like, I don't mean to get on a soapbox here, but it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes watching this stuff, I'm like, nothing's ever going to fucking change, man. Like,
I mean, we talked about that on our first episode. It's, I mean, similar but different with Do the Right Thing. Right. Like, God damn, this is like, it's insane how like this could have been shot last year and I would still believe, you know, all these topics and themes. And same here. I think the thing that I love about this scene so much is just how like succinct it is what she says, but also like how layered it is, you know, because like she could have like gotten into so much more detail and all that kind of stuff, but just like the way she said it, and like literally the words she chose, like it matters. You know, what you say is like, oh fuck, like that's like because you're a guy, because you're, you know, all that kind of stuff that's like tied to that. I was like, man, that's a really, I don't know. That's what impressed me the most. Like, man, that's I don't think there's a simpler, a more effective way to say this. Like it was a great line.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that Podfather talks about on his podcast, Adam Palcher, talks about it all the time, like not just like giving your audience respect, and like your audience is smart. Like, they don't need to go into a whole bunch of detail about what she's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all fucking know. We know what's going on. We know about sexism. We know about like gender, like dynamics and gender roles and all that shit. So it's like, that's all she needed to say. And it was perfect. And it was like, this is a really good example of the great writing and just, you know, great craftsmanship of this movie. But
there's so much nuance in exactly what you're saying. It was so succinct, but there was also so many layers to it. And I think it was placed perfectly in the movie. It was like literally right in the middle. When as the audience, we already respect the hell out of her. We know that Hannibal Lecter respects the hell out of her. We've seen that Crawford respects her as well and wants to do right by her. And so for her to demand that respect in every space so succinctly, it was masterful. I think is masterful writing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just like his response to it, just the literal shot as well, how we hang with them a little bit longer in the car. And I think it's very intentional just to see how, you know, how that scene wraps up. And yeah, it was very cool. I really enjoyed that.
I think it's interesting that I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone, but it mattered to me that she had Hannibal Lecter's respect. You know what I mean? Like I don't know why. Like, that's a terrible proof. We shouldn't care, but just the fact he's presented as this like evil genius, and the fact that he recognizes the genius in her, like, it's kind of cool. You know, they're like two sides of the same coin, right? You have like the good and the evil side, I guess. But one thing that so when they cast Anthony Hopkins, I can't remember the movie that they used as a reference why they hired Hopkins to play the role, but he was a good guy in that movie, and Hopkins was super confused. It's like, I don't know why you would cast me because of that movie. Like, I was a good guy. I was a good man. And Jonathan Demme said, well, Hannibal Lecter's a good man. He's just trapped in an evil mind. And I was trying to think about that. And I guess like it's sort of true because, and we kind of get an inkling of why they might have said that at the very end of the movie when he tells Clarice, like, no, you're good. I'm not going to do anything to you. Like, you're too important to the world, or whatever it was that he said. And that's what was really interesting, like to think of, you know, a good man trapped in an evil mind. And I don't really have an answer to it, but I thought it was an interesting perspective from the director.
Well, mine, I mean, kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, but like the respect between them, I think, is why I picked this scene, because I think it kind of amplifies or exemplifies it the most. And it's the quid pro quo where she wants to come in and get information, I believe, on Buffalo Bill, right? But he's like, I will answer your questions, but you've got to answer some of mine. And, you know, one of the first things, you know, that we get from Crawford is like, don't stand by the window. Don't answer any personal questions about yourself. Like, just all these don'ts. It's like, oh, that's very clearly there for a reason. And then later on, he's just like, well, you got to tell me about you if you want to know about this. And she's like, she hesitates, I think, just for half a second, but realizes like, this is the only way I'm going to get this information. So let's do it, you know? And so, he starts asking questions, and just like the first time that she says to him, like, quid pro quo, like, I get to ask my questions now, like kind of cutting him off. I'm like, you're talking to like this insane killer dude, you know, but like to have the fortitude, just be like, nope, my turn now. You know, it's like, I don't know that I could do that. You know, it's like, I really enjoyed that. That to me was one of the first times, if not the first time, where it's like, oh, I really think he respects her. And I think she knows, like, she, you know, respects his like methods, or however, you know, you want to phrase it. But like, so that's kind of where I feel like their first connection came from. Obviously, when they meet the first time, we get like the seeds of it. But this is, for me, this is like, oh, okay, these guys are going like head to head with each other, but in a really good way. So that's the scene I would choose to show someone, is the quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo, Doctor.
Billy is not a real transsexual, but he thinks he is. He tries to be. He's tried to be a lot of things, I expect.
You know, in that scene, not only is there a level of respect that they're showing each other. Okay. Also, we're just getting close-ups of their face.
Yeah.
Like that was so intense, and like how rapidly we were switching between them. So good. Literally, like the intensity of that scene is, and the weight of the conversation that they're having.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there is a lot of respect for each other. But also in that scene, something very special happens in which they gain trust for each other.
Yeah.
He decides to trust her and she decides to trust him. And I think that's interesting, Tyler, what you were saying about the director saying that this is a good guy trapped in an evil mind. And I think that's made apparent in this scene. Like, you know, he is genuinely interested in her. He is genuinely interested in knowing and understanding this person as a whole and on a psychological level, and in a way that he's not going to then turn around and use this information against her or try and hurt her with any of this. He's genuinely interested, and they're developing this layer of trust, and just like watching that happen so quickly and so intensely and so suspensefully. Amazing pick, Ben. That scene is it's masterful. Again, I'm going to use that word.
Yeah. I mean, drinking game. Anytime any of us calls this, masterful or work of art, take a shot. But yeah, it's so crazy too. I think in that scene, and some of the others, because, they say don't approach the glass, and then we see what he's in. And it's like there's a bunch of holes, but they're like on the top and the bottom and like barely big enough to get your finger through. And it's just like, how fucking dangerous is this dude that he could pull something off, that like, and again, like we see it like when he looks down at the pen and it's like, he is like straight jacketed up. I have no idea how he ended up with that, but it's just like, that's how good he is at this. It's just like, that creates this level of horror and terror where it's just like, yeah, what could happen? Like, with how close she gets or like, I have no idea what this guy's capable of, but they made it work for me that I'm terrified of this man who's through this plexiglass that is not going to like touch me at all. It's like, oh, this guy's fucking, who knows what's going to happen.
Every time they passed something through that sliding door, I thought for sure she was going to lose her hand or,
yes.
I really liked like when you mentioned how we just are on their faces the whole time. Every time it's on a person opposite Clarice, it's breaking the fourth wall. But every time it is looking at Clarice, the camera, I mean, she's looking off camera. And I thought that was really cool. And I read that they did that specifically so you would be in her point of view and you would empathize more with her character. I thought that was a really cool choice, a really good choice, and a really effective choice, because that is definitely striking, that back and forth in which it's just on their faces. And it's I don't have anything more flowery to say than the both of you have done. It's really hard not to pick a scene between the two of them as an elevator pitch, because it's just great. It's just really, really, really cool performances and just really awesome moments. But I decided to go with something that was a little more on the nose, right? Like I went with a very exposition heavy scene, but I like the exposition. I like the way that they do it. And it's the lead up when she gets to the hospital in Baltimore and we're hearing about all the things that Hannibal Lecter's done and who this guy is and just the build up. And I feel like for anyone who hasn't seen this movie and has probably heard of Hannibal Lecter, like this is the intro to the boxing match, right? Like this is all his credential. This is all the titles he's won. And this is all the things that he is and all the things that he do. We're presenting this monster, and, something that, Spielberg does so effectively in Jaws and a lot of other people do so well is not actually showing the monster. And so I think if I were trying to entice someone to see this movie, I would want the build up for the monster so that they can go and finally meet it and be terrified, just like I was. But I also really like the autopsy scene for all the reasons we talked about earlier, with Clarice being capable and inexperienced. Like She's the first one to find the bug in the throat and all that stuff, but you can tell she's kind of unsure what to do. She doesn't. She does the Robitussin or whatever under the vapor rub under her nose because she sees everyone else doing it, but you can tell
she even turns away to put it on.
Yeah,
you know, just like I don't know. I guess this is what we're doing, but yeah,
and she loses it afterwards. She's out by her car crying after this experience, and which is awful to see. But I just thought it was a really cool representation of all the things I liked most about her character. Like, despite her obvious discomfort with the situation, she still fucking kicked ass and was the one that figured out all the things. So
I think it was also interesting the first time that she goes to meet him. It's so powerful. Like, I think we go through like 4 sets of doors, I guess, to get where he's at. It's like, and all of them need like security clearance, like show my badge. Someone else has to let me in. It's like, oh, okay. Like, even that is just like an unspoken way to reiterate how dangerous these people are that we're about to go see. You know, like she walks by like 4 or 5 of them. And it's like, oh, these people are at least 4 metal doors away from being outside. So it's like, they're not fucking around at all. And it's like, I really, just like what you said, like we get to exposition, but we also get this whole thing of just, I mean, even the doctor's like, oh, you could have told me. And he's just like, I don't want to be here. Like, this place is scary, get me out of here. So yeah, I really like that as well.
That scene, I found Hannibal Lecter to be very charming and he really he chose all of his words very carefully, and he just was just spoke very elegantly and spoke very clearly and didn't mince words. And I liked the way that he spoke, but it's interesting, Tyler, that you chose that scene with the doctor kind of describing him. I had like a visceral physical reaction to that doctor. I hated him so much.
Oh, he sucks. That guy sucks so bad.
It was so literally I was cringing the whole time we were walking with him. I hated him so badly. And that was the very first, one of the very first instances that we see Clarice being doubted because he's just flagrantly hitting on her. And, he's like, what are you even doing here? Like, we should go out after this. Like,
he's like, are you going to stay here overnight? Like, do you want someone to show you around? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And he oh my God, I hated his face. He looked like Brain from Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
And then it's funny, whenever you mentioned the pen scene earlier, I could see, so because Chilton, the doctor, is painted in this way that it's like he's 10 steps behind Hannibal Lecter, who is just, aside from Clarice, the smartest person in this movie.
Yeah.
And whenever he sees the pen, it's so much less about the mechanics of how he's going to get that pen and so much more about the fact that he's going to do it because Chilton is an idiot and he can.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. Well, so great elevator pitches. Proud of you both. And honestly, that was one of the better discussions we've had around elevator pitches and every time we've done this segment. So well done. Everyone invite Carsen on your podcast. She makes it, she makes it better.
Sick.
There's only anyone here. It would be that much better. Okay, so I want to move into a segment we haven't done for a while, and a segment that has taken on many names, many faces, many iterations. And I think we found a pretty good landing spot for it. I'm, of course, talking about my favorite award, the Apollonia / Lee Van Cleef / Helm's Deep / Legacy Award. And basically, it started with the movie Purple Rain and how, despite it being a Prince movie with Prince music and Prince everything, Apollonia was just as synonymous with that movie as anything else. You can't think of Purple Rain without thinking of Apollonia, right? At least the concept of Apollonia, the name Apollonia, it's just synonymous with the movie, which is impressive considering that it's a Prince movie. So I want to talk about that concept here. What's the legacy of this movie? When you think of this movie, what do you think of? And Carsen, you're going to go first here.
Okay. I hope I answered this correctly.
Me too. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay. When I think of this movie, two things stand out to me. Actually, well, it's going to be three. I'm going to share the first one with you as funny, cute, haha. For the premiere of this movie, Anthony Hopkins brought his mom on the red carpet, and she said she said, "Oh, Tony's just so good at what he does," and she called him Tony. And so then now that I know that forever in my mind, he's no longer Anthony Hopkins, he's Tony.
Yeah.
And that movie did that for me.
That's always weird, though. It's like when people work with De Niro and they're like, oh, yeah, Bob. Yeah, it's like, right. No, you can't call him Bob. He's Robert De Niro. You have to say his full name. Like, you can't just call him Bob. It's just so weird.
So there's that little piece of factoid about good old Tony Hopkins. But then also I had no idea for the longest time that this was from this movie. And it is, I had his liver with some fava beans and a nice chianti. Yeah. I didn't realize that was like a cannibal thing. I don't know. I heard it like 2 decades ago. Like I had no idea. I think, normalize cannibalism, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It might be coming down with this too. Things are getting rough out there.
Yeah. I mean, also that ending line, though, it's like, it's such a cool play on words, like, I'm gonna have a friend for dinner or whatever. It's like, oh, that's a super smart way to put that. Like, it's so funny.
It's the asshole doctor from the Baltimore hospital.
Yeah.
Chilton.
So that's great.
Chilton.
Yeah. Fuck that guy.
Carsen, I listened to everything you said, but in my head, I just kept picturing the cover of Tony Hopkins Pro Skater, which I really hope Matt will make, because I just like the idea. Like, I just think that'd be so funny to see. Yeah. And I can't get that out of my head. So Matt, I hope you're listening to this, and I hope you'll make that for me, because I really want to play that game. But along the lines of the fava beans.
Wait, is this so you just play as Anthony Hopkins on like the gurney, rolling around half pipes and stuff?
Yeah.
Like you're strapped in.
That'd be fun. Yeah, instead of like all the different skaters, it's just all the different Anthony Hopkins roles. Like you can be Lecter, like all straight jacketed up, or when he was Hitchcock or whatever. It's just like, give me Hopkins, give me whatever his name was in
kickflip a 10 stair.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, I can't think about anything else now. But. So for me, it's just his runtime. You know what I mean? Like Anthony Hopkins, like how long he's on screen. That's what sticks out for me, because I think with a lot of people where they play these notorious villains, like so many of them have this like story that goes with it. Kind of like, Alan Rickman, like that being his first real movie is Die Hard. And then, he's just like one of the most famous villains of all time. And, with this, it's just like, oh, yeah, you were gone for a second, Tyler. The readers don't know that, but you were. But while you were gone, I kind of got to talk about your point of like Jaws. And it's so accurate, because it's almost more scary what we don't see him do, and also because he's on screen for like 10% of this movie. But the fact that he still like can go toe to toe and have that much of an impact, that's what always sticks out to me. It's like, this is such a powerful performance, because he was able to pack so much in 21 minutes to be Oscar worthy, which I do feel is legit. You know what I mean? Like, we talked earlier about, some Oscars are kind of like, hey, great job, you've been working for a long time, here's an award kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this felt like just legitimately, like I haven't looked up who he was up against, but I can't imagine any of them I would have been like, yeah, actually that person should have got it. So this isn't Pacino in Scent of a Woman, winning over Denzel and Malcolm X, which I will never let go. I will never drop that. I cannot believe they need to go back and rectify that. But so that's it. I mean, it's a really simple answer, but it's Anthony Hopkins and just how powerful this performance is. Like in one episode of The Office, this dude fucking won an Oscar. You know what I mean? Like 21 minutes, give me my leading actor awards. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine if we had gotten that much more of Hannibal Lecter. I feel like we got the exact amount that we needed, right? Like any amount more, I think would have been too much. Maybe sort of the mystique would have started to wear off maybe a little bit. They gave us just the right amount, and boy, does he bring it! It's pretty incredible. But speaking of packing things into small spaces, I'm going with Buffalo Bill. See what I'm going for there?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
It's hard. It's like impossible for me to think about this movie without thinking of Buffalo Bill. And it's probably because of all the man-children friends I've had in my day who have done the Buffalo Bill pose for me. It's very cute. It's very fun.
Always a good time.
I don't know. Like it's similar to Hannibal Lecter. I'd only ever seen Buffalo Bill out of context, whether it was a friend doing the dance for me or whether it was a reference from a different show like South Park or whatever. And out of context, he just seemed like some sort of like ghoulish cartoon, some garish, like, I don't know, whatever. And so I was like, how is this the villain of the movie? Like, it just never really made sense. I got that he like people in a hole. I got all that, but I was just like, it just never made sense to me. But again, in the context of the story, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, it all makes sense. It's just something that, in my opinion, needs to be seen in context. But even despite that, like, it's almost like two movies. It's almost like we have the Clarice movie and then we have the Buffalo Bill movie. Right? It's just like, I don't know. And it's pretty. It has to be a wild performance. It has to be a true standout performance to compete with Hopkins and Foster. I mean, I don't think his performance was as good, but it was effective, right? And I just I don't know how you don't just, whether you think of it as a joke or not, like, I just don't know how you don't think about Buffalo Bill when you think of Silence of the Lambs. So
I really like when we go into his house for the first time.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was like, I would love for it to be Clarice because I was so blown away by this performance, but it's just like, unfortunately, it's Buffalo Bill, man. Like, he just kind of steals the show. And apparently they didn't want to do that little dance number. They wanted to cut it, but the actor who Ted Levine fought to keep it in. He thought it was really important. So, top Ted.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Good job, Ted. Yeah, I was just going to say, when we go into his house for the first time and just kind of that, through all the different rooms and seeing what he's made and go up behind him at like the sewing table or whatever. It's like, oh man, this guy's fucking creepy as shit. Like it's so well done. It's like, oh, what a way to tell us everything about a person without telling us anything. It's so good.
Also that line, it puts the lotion on its skin. That's so iconic. That is like, that is integrated in pop culture. That is so well known.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Carsen, because that's what I want to talk about next. We're going to leave the well at Buffalo Bill's basement, and we're going to head over to our Rushmore Mountain. And I want to talk about the most referenced movies or scenes in pop culture, because this movie, as we've talked about, whether it's the lotion on the skin line or it's the Buffalo Bill dance or it's people doing Hannibal Lecter impressions, like this movie has been referenced to death. It's been parodied to death. And so I think it easily deserves a spot on the referenced movie Rushmore. But I want to know what you guys think about some other entries here.
These are OR scrubs. Oh, are they?
And I'm going to let you guys decide who goes first. Whoever jumps the gun first will etch their selection onto Rushmore Mountain.
Ben, please. It would be my honor to go after you.
Wow. That's a privilege. I appreciate that. Like personally, it's like, I don't know that I quote anything more than, like Ferris Bueller or, just like my personal favorite movies. I mean, even an example of this one, like Dumb and Dumber, that's the first time I heard the fava beans, line, it's a bottle of Chianti is like from that. So, I mean, that's also something that in my, life, I've definitely quoted a lot, but I'm going to reference something that actually like we watched on this podcast that I watched for the first time. And that was even a thing I brought up when we talked about it was just like finally getting the reference for all of the Lord of the Rings memes. You know, like for 3 hours, I was just like Leo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pointing at the screen. It's like, oh, I know what that is. Like, I know what that's from. You know, it's like, now I get it all. Like, I knew it was Lord of the Rings, but I couldn't have told you like from what movie or like what it was about or anything. So just watching that all happen is like, oh yeah, second breakfast. Okay, I get it. Keep your secrets then. All right, cool. I understand that now. You know, like meat's back on the menu. Yes, it is. You know, it's just like all of that. It's like, all right, cool. I get it all now. So I think that's just like so much in pop culture now. Maybe not as much like something that I would reference or anything, but it feels impossible to not see that, you know, all over, but deservedly so. Like obviously like one of the best trilogies of all time. So.
Beautiful. I love that answer. That brings such warmth to my heart. It's a tough act to follow, Carsen. What do you have us?
You know, I am thinking of 3 movies. I know that that's not what it is, but it's for the same exact reason. And it is just a tiny little jingle that we hear a lot. So I'm thinking of Jaws, the dana. Very similarly in Halloween, we get that sort of like ominous jingle there. And then finally, who are you going to call? Everyone knows the answer to that.
Yeah, they do.
That's true.
Okay, so let's take a vote. Out of those three, what do you see referenced the most?
Out of those 3,
I would say either Jaws or Ghostbusters. I want to say Jaws, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's what I would go with. While you were saying that, it made me think, I think a recent example of that is the like Hans Zimmer from Inception, like the like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like every movie does that now. You know, it's like oh, it was cool and it was in that, and now everyone's trying to do like replicate that. But I think maybe that's our modern day version of kind of like the Jaws. Like, hey, what if we like do our version of this, like kind of the same thing? So I would go with Jaws though for sure.
All right, that's my answer.
Love it.
Fantastic answer.
Plus, I mean, honestly, some great quotes in that. Like, we're going to need a bigger boat. Like, like, there's plenty of actual quotes in there as well that definitely get referenced. Like, that's a great choice.
Well, I went with The Shining, another horror movie, another iconic villain moment, villain performance. And, probably the most famous reference in there is the Here's Johnny, which is in itself a reference, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And it's a movie that I didn't discover, but I finally saw thanks to this podcast. So there's a little bit of like meta link there, which is important to me. So I think that's a hell of a list. That'd be a fun four
quadruple feature.
Here's a little Carsen lore. The Shining is, I don't know if you guys know this about me. So Annie does action. I'm a horror queen.
Okay.
That's my lane. And The Shining is actually my favorite movie of all times. I've seen it countless times. I love that movie. There is so many quotable things. And the thing that I love about that movie is that no matter how much it ages, there's always something new to find in it.
Yeah.
And that really speaks to like the level of meticulous of Stanley Kubrick. I'm sorry, now I have to get this off my chest. It's the 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey today.
Oh, that's right. I saw
today?
that.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Tyler and I watched early on, like before the podcast, before Matt was part of it. We watched that, and I think we were both just texting each other like, "What was that? What did we just watch?" Kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's
I loved it. Well, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I have no clue like what happened
honestly,
in there. But
that's somewhat similar to The Shining. I love The Shining. If I hadn't seen it already, that would have been my pick for this round because that's easily the one that gets the most. Like, how have you not seen The Shining? I'm not much of a horror guy. I like psychological thrillers like The Shining and Silence of the Lambs. I don't like jump scare, gore, horror, like that sort of stuff. But stuff like this, stuff like Jordan Peele makes, or this or Hitchcock stuff. Like I dig that kind of stuff. It's very specific taste. I have to Ben has to watch it first and he'll tell me.
So if it's Tyler approved or not.
I do the same thing for Annie.
I like that.
It's a good friend.
That's funny.
I love that list. Okay, that might be one of our better Rushmores too. What an episode!
Yeah, it was a great
What an
episode.
episode. Well, so is there anything else we want to talk about? Anything else we haven't covered before we get out of here? I feel like it was a good conversation.
I do have one question that I would like to make a tradition every time the movie Mavens are here.
Ooh.
Carsen, I would love to know what's your spicy double feature with Silence of the Lambs?
For Silence of the Lambs. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay. Immediately I'm thinking Taxi Driver. Just because of Jodie Foster, of course, who gave an incredible performance in that as well. Also sort of a psychological thriller. Also, a classic. I think it's like 74, 75, Martin Scorsese. And Bob De Niro.
Buddy Bob.
Who, has chops just like Tony Hopkins does. I think that's going to be my double feature. Pretty heavy though. I would, space those viewings out.
Yeah. Maybe not back to back, but
yeah, right.
You don't want to go for a walk in between or something.
Right. Yeah.
That's a really good choice. Yeah. I like that.
Cool. Hey, thanks guys for having me on. This was so much fun.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Tell everyone again where they can find you.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. We're Movie Mavens. We do the spicy double feature. And you can find us on Twitter at Movie Mavens Pod and on Instagram at Movie Mavens. And you can send us an email also if you have a double feature recommendation, moviemavenspodcast@gmail.com.
Nice.
We love receiving emails.
Love an email.
Well, go do that. Go email them, subscribe to them, back and hang out with your friends here at Three Films Podcast. You can Three Films and a Podcast. I don't even know the name of our show, but you can find us at Three Films Pod on all the socials. Go check us out on YouTube or Spotify video. My boy Ben crushes these videos and puts a lot of work and effort into it, and it's by far the best way to consume this product. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you all next week.
See ya.
I have no plans to call on you, Clarice. The world's more interesting with you in it. So you take care now to extend me the same courtesy.
You know I can't make that promise.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.